Senators Chris Coons and Ron Johnson, welcome back to the show, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Mr. Johnson, let me begin with you. From all the reports, there's going to be a lot of class warfare, populism in the president's State of the Union speech. He's going to want to raise taxes on rich people. He's got Warren Buffett's secretary, who apparently is overtaxed compared to her boss, sitting next to Michelle Obama. What do you make of that? Is this year in Congress and the campaign trail going to be all about a battle between free market capitalism and a more social welfare entitlement state?
Well, Larry, yes.
Yes.
Let's face it, the president doesn't want to run in his record because his record is miserable. You worked for a great president. In the first 30 months of Ronald Reagan's recovery, he had created 8.9 million jobs. President Obama has created a little over 700,000, less than 10%, because Ronald Reagan went after, had an agenda of lower taxes, lower regulation, less government intrusion in our lives. Of course, President Obama has done the exact opposite. He's made the situation far worse. So, of course, what he's going to do is he's going to try and divide Americans, which is just sad. I don't see how that helps our economy grow at all.
Mr. Coons, do you feel he's going to divide, President Obama's going to divide Americans tonight? And I don't understand how raising the tax rates on those most likely to invest and take risks promotes economic growth.
Well, Larry, what I hope to hear tonight is a blueprint for economic fairness that continues to focus on the importance of economic opportunity, of making it possible for American manufacturing to continue to grow at a record rate, for us to continue to have month after month of steady private sector job growth, which we've had now for 22 months, and that focuses on the skills we need for the future and how, in a bipartisan way, we can create the tax, trade, intellectual property, immigration, and investment environment we need to help businesses all across the United States, small and large, manufacturing and other sectors, to steadily grow. I don't see why having some focus on tax reform and economic fairness is necessarily going to be called class warfare or necessarily divides Americans. I think it simply points out the fact that the very wealthiest Americans have steadily done better in the last decade, while the vast majority of working Americans have been losing ground.
But Mr. Johnson, does taxing the wealthiest and the most likely to succeed and invest, does that promote middle-class growth? Does that promote jobs? In other words, is there fundamentally a conflict between the philosophy of economic fairness and the philosophy of free market capitalism and rewarding success? Are they mutually exclusive?
Well, listen, when you increase taxes on job creators, it has a cost, and that's what President Obama is doing. And they talk about economic fairness. Back in 1991, the top 1% paid 25% of the tax burden. Last year they paid 37%. So our tax rate is progressive. That top 1%, they earn 17% of the income. They pay 37% of the tax.
So it's very progressive. It's
very progressive, and their effective tax rate's about 25%. And if you ask most Americans, how much should the federal government take out of your paycheck? Somewhere, it's in that 20 to 25% range is what most people feel is fair. So I think the tax code is already fair. But hey, I'm all for tax reform. Let's face it, 70,000 pages. The government is picking. It is social engineering. It's trying to drive uneconomic activity through the tax code. We should have a tax code that collects the revenue that we need and does no economic harm. I'm all for significant tax reform.
Senator Coons, can I ask you, do you think that Mitt Romney should be paying more in taxes after looking at his payments today? Do you think he's too little taxed? Do you think he should pay more?
But my gut answer, Larry, is I think the same answer I hear from Delawareans, which is if the very wealthiest Americans pay just 15% and the vast majority of working Americans pay more than double that, there seems to be something out of whack. One thing that Senator Johnson and I can agree on is that both of us think that we need a tax code that remains progressive, but that is simpler, clearer, fairer, and helps encourage investment and growth in our economy. I'm not going to pass judgment on Mitt Romney and his past economic activities. I just think we need to say going forward that in order for us to restore a sense of fairness and a sense that everybody has the same opportunity and bears the same burdens in this country, we need to engage in basic tax reform.
All right, gentlemen, I have to leave it there. I just want to editorialize myself. That 15% rate that Romney's paying on primarily capital gains, that's a double tax on corporate profits. If you put in the corporate profits tax, which is 35%, actually, Mr. Romney is paying about 45% effective tax rate, and that's a reason we need tax reform, because we shouldn't double tax corporate profits, saving, or investment. Anyway, many thanks to Senator Chris Coons of Delaware and Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. I appreciate it, gentlemen, very much.
Thanks, Larry.